Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're gonna be talking about Wildcats, the first story arc, which is called Resurrection Day. This covers issues 1 through 4 of the 1992 series. So we're starting with Wildcats at the ground floor. This was written by Brandon Choi, who originally he went to college to learn how to write for movies, TV shows. He wanted to work in Hollywood. It's by Jim Lee. So Jim Lee at this point was starting his own comic book called Wildcats. He needed a writer, and he got his friend Brandon Choi to write. Now he knew that this guy writes, he has talent in writing, but he wants to write TV shows and stuff like that, right? But he's like, hey, just kind of translate that into the comic book writing, right? Which comic book writing is a lot different. And when you read these books, you get the feeling that this was almost trying to be like a movie. And I think Image Comics, Wildcats, and other series from Image started this trend where you started getting this cinematic feel with the writing, and then some artists would do the same, where the art would feel kind of like it almost would feel like a movie, right? It was in August of 1992. Second issue was in September of 1992. Third issue was in December. And finally, the fourth issue was in March of 93. Okay, so let's start off with the story a little bit. We have some archaeologists right here where it says in Antarctica. And this is supposed to be July 29 of 1980. And they seem to have found this orb. When they get this orb, this magical alien being appears. And these archaeologists are tripping out. She says, leave the orb alone. Takes the orb, disappears. So it's a great way to start the series. Okay, they're giving it some importance. Who is this alien, right? And what is this orb? These archaeologists never talked about it again because people would think they're crazy, right? So now we fast forward many years in the future. We're now in August of 1992. I like that the series says it's August of 92 because that's when the series started. So it's giving you the real time, the real dates and so forth. We have the government checking out this place from many years ago. They said they're looking for this orb, so they're like, here's where it was found, and we know there was some type of alien interaction and whatnot. Government wants to get a hold of this, and one of the main characters here is some guy Lynch. He will come out later. He'll be a big part of the Image universe, but at this point we just see him overseeing this. And we jump over to New York City. We have this midget named Jacob Marlowe. He's homeless at this time. He's talking about how society failed him in the 80s. And now we're in the early 90s. We're in 92 now. This guy is homeless, sleeping in an alley somewhere. And these guys start messing with him. And this alien that we saw many years ago, back in 1980, that recovered this orb, she appears and saves them. She introduces herself as Void. And she tells them, are you Jacob Marlowe? You were once Lord Imp, one of the four lords of the power, the champion of mankind. That's what she calls him, the champion of mankind. So he's supposed to be this big, important person in the future, right? And she's explaining this to him. He can't believe it. She tells him the Cabal has once more ascended the power on this world. So the Cabal is after humankind. And they're this other alien race that are trying to take over Earth. And she's part of this other alien race. Other alien race was called the Cherubim. Now they're the good guys. And the villains, the Cabal, that's their group name. But the race itself, they're called Demonites. So immediately in the beginning, it establishes that that's what we got going on here. The story is going to be about alien races, angels versus demons, basically. Now we fast forward a little bit, and this guy, Lord Imp, being Jacob Marlowe, he's not rich. So he's like this rich yuppie. Yuppie was this thing back in the 80s that were like rich playboy millionaire types, right? So he is now that. And that was all thanks to Void. She put him in these situations where he would become rich and have the resources to gather this Wildcats covert operations team. She's explaining how she keeps having this dream, how in the future, she says, I am locked in mortal combat with a mysterious man who covets an orb of great power. So she keeps having this dream of this guy that's kind of taking over, and he has this orb. And he's explaining to him, we have to stop this future or this dream from coming to fruition. Okay, so now we get introduced to the actual Wildcats team. The first guy here is Maul. He's the muscle. He basically, his power is he gets bigger and bigger and stronger when he gets angry. But he also loses intelligence, so he gets more primal. Second guy here is Spartan. Spartan is kind of like the leader of the team. He's an android, has all kinds of powers. Third guy here is Warblade. Now, Warblade, he can stretch. His arms can get longer. His nails can get longer. They could turn into razor sharp objects. And he's kind of like a ninja. So these guys are half alien Caribbean and half human. And Jacob Marlowe is building this team up. He went around with Void, finding these guys that are half breeds to build a Wildcats team because they know they will need to save the world one day. And he's all stressed out right here. He's like, I don't know what I'm doing with this team. I don't think they're good enough. I don't know if I'm gonna be good at this job either because things are not going along as planned. They're coming along slowly, but they haven't even seen no real action, right? And he even comments that, man, maybe I should just, sign the young bloods to work with me. This universe, they're the top dog. They're kind of like your Avengers. The public loves them. They work with the government. They're trusted. And the Wildcats are like your underrated team, like the X-Men, except here instead of mutants, they're half aliens, right? Where people kind of still fear them and we don't know much about them. So there's a new team here that's still trying to establish themselves, haven't even been on their first mission. Now we're getting introduced to the Cabal. So in the Cabal, they're all sitting here having dinner and so forth. And we get introduced to one of our main characters, Pike. He's here talking to this guy who they think is gonna betray them. Starts choking the life out of this guy at the dinner table. Then we get introduced to our next guy who's kind of like the big bad. His name is Helspont. So he's a Daemonite, and Daemonites, they go into the bodies of people. Now he did not possess a human body. He's possessing some other type of alien body that looks to be a lot more stronger than a human's body. And then our third player here is one called Providence. Now we're not too familiar with their superpowers at this point. Hasn't been explained to us yet, but we're just getting introduced to every character as we go. Now the third group we get introduced to, one of them is this character named Grifter. He's at this strip club, and no, he's not just checking out this hot stripper. There's this hot stripper named Voodoo. But what he's doing here is she's also a half breed. She's a Caribbean and human. And we quickly find out as she's looking at the customers, her power is some of these demonites, they possess human bodies. And while we're seeing humans, she can see which ones are demonites. Like she sees them differently, how they really look. So this power can be very useful for the good guys, the Caribbean, and it's a big threat for the demonites because they can be exposed. So as she's dancing here, she has customers, and one of them is a demonite, and they're after her. Luckily, Grifter's here to save her because he knows that they're gonna come after her, so that's why he's looking for her as well. He saves her, explains everything to her. Okay, so I saw hell breaks loose in this strip club. They get into this whole action scene, not a big shootout. Grabs the Wildcats' attention. They jump into action. They show up right here as well, and they get introduced to this character Voodoo as well. And Grifter and Scylla, they quickly realize they're all on the same team and they're all after the Demonites. So you slowly see the Wildcats team growing. We get introduced to all the major players, and the team, you start seeing it almost double in size right before our eyes, right? As the Wildcats are at their headquarters and kind of getting everything together, they were just wrapping their head around everything that had just boom, somebody breaks in. It's IO. So IO is basically in this universe, they're like the government, right? Think Shield at Marvel. And the main guy here is Lynch, who he's a little bit like your Nick Fury. So he's looking for these Wildcats because this is a new player in town and he wants to know all about them, right? Doesn't trust them because he doesn't know them. As he talks to Jacob Marlowe, it turns out they're kind of after a lot of the same things. So we've established that they're also good guys. Marlowe lets them know that we can't trust you guys in the government because there's a mole. By a mole is these demonites, they possess bodies, right? The human bodies. So it turns out one of the higher ups in the government is actually a demonite, but you guys wouldn't know because he looks like a regular human. And he lets them know you wouldn't believe me if I told you who it was. Turns out it's the vice president. So yeah, someone really high up is a demonite. He goes, so how are you guys ever gonna get anything done when this guy's working with them, right? to the higher up, that's a demonite. We go to the villain side of things, right? We're checking out the Cabal. And the Cabal, here we have Belial, who's the vice president, possessed by a demonite. He's talking to Pike, and we as the reader, we're seeing them have a disagreement. And when they have this disagreement, it's so that we could see his superpowers, right? And you see he could kind of stretch, and he's green. And you see he's slightly more stronger than Pike is. So we know the pecking order of power levels and so forth. He's above Pike. While this is happening, the Wildcats and the IO, meaning the government team with Lynch, they found out where this Cabal is at, and they know that they have this orb. So the Wildcats want this orb, right? Because it wields a lot of power. So they infiltrate them, and we get a big action scene. Once the Wildcats grab the vice president, we get introduced to a new team, meaning the Youngbloods. They show up, and they want to stop the Wildcats from attacking the president because they don't know the president is a demonite. Okay, so while all this is happening, now they're battling the Youngbloods, and we get introduced to yet another team. Now this team is the Youngbloods is villains. They're called a triad. We get to see the big bad. His name is Gnome or Master Gnome, and his henchmen are Slag, Attica, and Harm. So now we get to see all the characters on the Youngbloods villains. And now they're saying, let them all battle it out, and then we'll come in once they're all weakened, and we'll take this orb from the Cabal. So it's like the Royal Rumble. You have all kinds of different factions, different teams, all fighting over this orb. Shit gets crazy here. It gets real insane. You have like 1,000,000 characters fighting. So with this Jim Leard, he knows how to draw fight scenes. If there's one thing he's good at, is his art is dynamic. So while it's always fun and exciting to see, you could get lost in the shuffle because there's so many new characters thrown at you at such a fast pace. It's like they wanted to cram every single character in the Image universe into one story arc just so that you could get introduced to all of them right away instead of doing it at a slower pace over time, right? Now, what this action fight scenes do is they set up the pecking order. So while everybody's fighting, you see which characters are stronger than others, right? So you kind of get an idea to see what everybody's superpowers are while they're fighting, and you get to see which characters' powers are stronger than other characters. Now we get to see the Demonites finally fully see how they look when they're not possessing bodies, right? They're these weird alien creatures because voodoo has this power to make them leave the human host, right? So we're getting introduced to everybody's powers, and that seems to be one of hers. All these characters at this time, they have a lot of powers that we haven't been introduced to yet. And in this fight scene, one thing it did really good is we get a better understanding of what kind of weapons they wield. Now, during all this mayhem, it turns out Master Gnome wields the second costume. Once he's wearing the second costume, it is the outfit that Void saw in her dreams. The guy holding that orb that would kill her and kill Jacob Marlowe and take over the world is actually Master Gnome. Once she recognizes him, and so does Jacob Marlowe, he sees he's holding the orb. So literally what happened in the dream is about to come to fruition. And Jacob Marlowe, boom, just blasts his hand off. You see this guy's hand fall off with the orb that he is no longer holding. This scene is very brutal, very bloody. This is definitely meant for teenagers. It's not tame when it comes to the violence and the action. It's a very heavy-handed with a lot of it, while at the same time never really feeling gratuitous. It always feels like it serves a purpose, right? This looks very cool right here. Once he drops this orb, they kind of feel like, oh, we sort of saved the world, but now how are we gonna get out of this place because it's about to blow up? This had 90s action movie written all over it, the way the panel layouts and the way the action is moving. It was real cool to see, a lot of fun. Although it didn't have a lot of depth to it, it was always entertaining. During this whole explosion, everybody kind of gets out alive, but we have Spartan who was kind of blown to smithereens, right? And when everybody leaves, they're celebrating. They're like, yes, we saved the day. And Voodoo is pointing out to the team like, we lost a member. We left a Spartan. Jacob Marlowe explains to Voodoo he's an android, so they can just rebuild them, and they just have to save his like memory drive, basically, right? So that was interesting. We got to see that he's a character that can always just come back to life, right? So we can use him as a casualty whenever, and he can be repaired. That was the ending of the story. It definitely ended with a bang, with all kinds of fireworks all over the place. Huge fight scene. I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. Can't wait to read the next story arc, and hopefully we kind of slow it down a little bit, and it gives the characters some depth and some development, right? Other than that, I think that's about it for this story arc. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, go ahead and hit that like button. And if you want to keep following me on this journey, reading the rest of these Wild Comics books, and we'll get into other Image books as well, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way it'll keep you notified on your feed every time a new video drops. Other than that, just like to thank you guys for taking some time out of your day to check this video out. And I'll check you guys out later.